Speaking of Bernie Sanders, he is surging in the polls. The most reliable national poll came out this past week, and it had Joe Biden at 23%, it had Bernie Sanders at 20%, and it had Elizabeth Warren at 20%, but more closer to the 19 number. But effectively what it showed is that there is a statistical tie. The margin of error for the poll was 3.4%. So there's a statistical tie among the top three candidates. And this is bad news for anybody who was hoping that Bernie or Warren did not get the nomination. And what it showed was that Bernie is up 5% in this poll, while Joe Biden has fallen 5%, and Elizabeth Warren has fallen 2% in this poll. And polls are not everything, but they're an indicator of the mood of the electorate, at least as far as we can tell at this point in the race. And this comes after he had his heart attack, and everyone's like, well, I mean, come on, like,
right,
you know, your old dude just drop out, endorse Warren, call it a day. But he comes out, and he's swinging. He has a 26,000 people rally with AOC upon her endorsement in New York. He turns around, he goes to Detroit, and gives his best speech of his presidential campaigns, both 2016 and 2020 in Detroit, where Rashida Tlaib endorsed him. And then he goes to Minnesota, he electrifies that crowd. 10,000 people show up. She endorses him. I mean, it is just amazing to see. And I think that what mainstream media wanted to happen was, okay, we could at least stomach Warren. Right. She's more willing to play team ball than Bernie. And so I don't think that they were ever on her side per se, but it was more wish casting with Joe Biden falling that, okay, well, if we have to pick one of these two, we're going to pick Warren because she doesn't present as big of an immediate threat as Bernie would. But now that's in total reverse. And in addition to this poll, Bernie Sanders is leading among all presidential candidates for individual donations, smaller dollar donations of $200 or less among Latinos. He's leading all candidates in small dollar donations of $200 or less among women. He is starting to surge in these polls. And in Iowa, where 54% of his supporters said they are excited to turn up and vote for him, and in a caucus, that is very important because for people who are not familiar with caucuses, you have to stand in line for a very long time, much longer than a primary, because you're not just simply casting your ballot. You have to wait for all the people to be counted. Then they have to do the math. And then if your candidate doesn't make the 15% margin, then you get to go to another candidate of your choosing. So there's a lot of time invested. And when it comes to caucus states, like Iowa, like Nevada, I keep telling people it's about turning out your base. It's about motivating them. It's about who believes in your message. And time and time and time again in these polls, whether he's going up, whether he's going down or remaining steady, Bernie Sanders' numbers have fluctuated the least amount for all of the contenders versus a Warren or Joe Biden who have gone up and they've gone down. And well, just what is your take as far as that's happening?
It's the same thing. It's authenticity. Bernie is the most authentic candidate that is out there in the field. And his message is resonating with people. And he's gotten more traction now than he had against Hillary.
Because his name ID is blown up.
Right. And which brings me back to kind of similar to Obama's run. Mm-hmm. The way that Bernie is moving is the same way. Obama had that red state and blue state speech that put him on the map.
Yep.
Nobody outside of Illinois knew who Barack Obama was.
And most people in Illinois probably didn't know who he was.
They probably didn't. They just didn't want to vote for the other guy.
You're right.
Who nobody remembers. But he got that traction, and then people started to pay attention to him. And then they started to write him off. And then he won Iowa.
Exactly.
And then he won this. Then he won that. Then he won this. Then, as you said, the small dollar donations. That was Obama's thing. That was Obama's thing.
People, and I don't think people appreciate this enough when it comes to small dollar donations. These are coming from people that work at Walmart, Starbucks, McDonald's, companies like that. Spending $20
will make or break a budget or what you're doing for your household for that month, that week, whatever it may be.
That's a huge financial decision for some people.
And like with Obama, it was a lot of people that were on fixed incomes that were giving. And it's the same thing with Bernie. People don't have this to spare, and to the fact that they don't have it to spare and they're willing to give it to you
on a committed monthly basis,
it means that what you are doing, what you are saying, is the truth, and they have a backing of you, unlike a Hillary Clinton or a Trump, when they're like, yeah, whatever. Like, no, we believe in you.
Yeah, we believe in
we support you. Yep. We know your history, know what you've done. And anybody that is attempting to discredit what Bernie's done, Bernie's been the same guy for decades. And with the age of information, like, that's at your fingertips. You can see what they voted. You can see how they voted, and it's the same.
And remember earlier when I was telling you about those counties that voted twice for Obama, then flipped to Trump. Bernie's raising more money out of those counties than anybody in the Democratic field or Donald Trump. And as far as Democrats are concerned, he's the only person that has more individual donors than Donald Trump does.
Voters are waking up. What those counties are is what that blue wall used to be. And he's tapping back into that because he knows the work of strife, and he's going to do something about it.
Economic populism works in the Rust Belt. That's what people want to be told. People know that they have gotten screwed by these terrible trade deals, that these trade deals have done nothing but prop up corporate power and greed and income while accosting the typical average American. And when you have somebody like that who comes out and says, hey, I was against this stuff, and here goes the proof of me being against that. And then you have other people who are saying that stuff was bad, but it wasn't that bad. At least it wasn't as bad as what Donald Trump is doing. One message is going to resonate because somebody is saying Donald Trump sucks and I want to change what's going on now and what led to Donald Trump, while you have some people saying Donald Trump sucks, so just go back to the way things used to be. Like, that's not going to work with people. And when you get over 1 million individual donors, when you have thousands of volunteers in these states that are going door to door, that are knocking on doors, that are talking to people, that are text banking, phone banking, that's something that polls do not pick up on. Because it shows there that you have, out of everybody, the most ability to expand your electorate. You have the biggest ability to expand your base. I remember back in September, New York Times did a map to show like where these candidates are getting who's getting the most individual small dollar donations out of all the candidates. And the map was, and everybody had their own color. Bernie's color was blue. The map was so blue, except for Texas, where Beto O'Rourke was getting the most contributions. So they had to do a second map to show like, oh, other people are still getting, contributions. It's just like not as dedicated as Bernie's is. And he's rising at the right time. I'd argue that this is the time where you want to rise. This is the time where people are now is getting cold. They're staying in more. They're starting to pay more attention to what's on television, which is going to be political ads, which is going to be advertisements for these debates that are going to be coming up this month and next month. This is the time, a point in time where you want to start rising in the polls. You don't want to go in the summer and be taking a jump like Kamala Harris did, and then it fades as time goes on because you have American election cycles are ridiculously long. I mean, for example, Jeremy Corbyn and Boris Johnson, Trump Jr., they're going to be running in 6 weeks, like for prime minister. And what are we doing? We're a year out from the general election, let alone the primaries coming up in the next few months. But you don't want to take that summer bump. You don't want to take that early fall bump. You want to get it right into the middle around the holiday season when it's getting cold, when people are staying inside. So that way now your message is not only where it has been at, and for Bernie it's been mainly like the internet, social media among young people. Now you're starting to get these ads for older people. Now you're starting to get older people to tune into the debates. Now you're starting to get the thing that you need done. That's energy on the ground, that's phone banking, that's texting, that's the donation. All of that is coming together at the right time for Bernie Sanders. And I think that's why Michael Bloomberg entered the race. I think that if Joe Biden was doing better, he wouldn't have entered the race. And honestly, out of all the people who I think shouldn't be running for president, and there's pretty much everybody except for the top three, I think, shouldn't be running for president because you're literally not going to win.
Right.
Michael Bloomberg was the one I was the happiest with because this is going to give Bernie, like, if he makes it, I don't think he's going to make the November one because it's just too late to qualify. But if he makes the December debate and he and he's just on stage with Bernie, this gives Bernie the opportunity to literally look into the camera and say, this guy to my left or to my right is exactly what I'm talking about. The only reason why Michael Bloomberg is relevant for running for president is not because he was the mayor of New York. They don't even mention that when they talk about Michael Bloomberg. They say billionaire Michael Bloomberg. And that's the only reason he's relevant is because he's a billionaire. So he's going to be able to buy these interviews for CNN and MSNBC and potentially Fox News and ABC and all these other big conglomerate media organizations. He's going to be able to buy hundreds of millions of dollars worth of advertising online and on television and things like that. But the only reason at the core why we even know that Michael Bloomberg is running for president is because he's not some Joe Schmo. He's somebody who's worth $53 billion. And this is what Bernie and to a lesser degree Warren, they're going to be able to now look at two billionaires on stage, Tom Steyer and Michael Bloomberg, and they're going to be able to tell people, think about why these people are on stage with us right now. Think about why we're having a serious discussion on why we have to change the structure of American politics, the structure of our economy, the structure of our criminal justice system, and somehow or another, these billionaires who have nothing to complain about in life, you have everything at your feet. You get to now step on the stage and try to run for president. And if Joe Biden was doing better, there's no way the Democratic establishment would have signed off on this. And trust me, they were signing off on this one because they are terrified that Joe Biden is going to lose the nomination, and more specifically that Bernie Sanders is going to end up winning the nomination.
Joe ran at the wrong time. Joe should have ran when he was vice president. He would have had enough strength.
Well, Obama told him twice not to run.
Yeah.
He told him in 2016, like, if you run, people are going to look at you as another old white guy. And then before Joe Biden announced this time, and you talk about an endorsement from, like, people are like, oh, why hasn't Obama endorsed his vice president yet? Maybe because before Joe announced, Barack Obama literally called this man and told him, Joe, you don't have to do this. That's him telling you, like, man, please don't run for president. Like, just don't do it, dude. Like, and I don't think if Joe Biden was going to win presidency, it was going to be 2008, where he got crushed so bad in Iowa. I think he got like 3% of the vote that he had to drop out like that night of the from the presidential race. But Joe Biden is a product of a time period in politics that is gone. He is a Mesozoic fossil. Like, nobody wants to hear about your they're not even half measures at this point. I mean, he's sitting there talking about, oh, Republicans are going to have an epiphany. Like, give me a break, dude. You were vice president for Barack Obama. They would not even let Obama pass something like a public option. You know this from experience. And you're sitting here talking about how, oh, they're going to have an epiphany.
Their platform was repeal and replace.
That's it. The only reason why the Tea Party came to be and got a significant amount of power in the Republican Party because it was a visceral reaction to a black man becoming president.
Yes.
Literally. And you think that these people are about to have an epiphany? Like, we have to get out of this mindset of playing nice with the Republicans because, oh, you got to work both sides of the aisle. They don't work both sides of the aisle. They say, this is our platform. This is what we're going to pass. Do something about it. And I was just listening to something earlier this week, and the host brought up a good point, and he said that Democrats bring their stats and notebooks to gunfights. And that's so true. And it's happening now in the Democratic primaries. And that's why Bernie Sanders is starting to surge again. Because when we sit down and we think about the issues that we're facing in this country, when we're talking about, even in a broader sense, the world, when we're talking about the climate crisis, when we're talking about economic growth, when we're talking about wages, when we're talking about healthcare, education, these are very important things to people. And when you have someone coming out with their milquetoast solutions, and you have somebody as dry and boring as a Mayor Pete or Amy Klobuchar who don't have really anything different to offer you, it's more of the standard same old shit politics of yesterday, what's going to happen is you're going to get what you never wanted. And I'm talking about for the Democratic establishment. And that's, you're going to get Bernie Sanders running as president, for president. And if he wins, they're going to be in even worse shape. And, let's not make the mistake of assuming that every single one of his dream policy proposals is going to pass. Because that's not going to happen.
No.
But what is going to happen is that a significant portion of them will. Or at least in the version that gets the ball rolling in the right direction once and for all. And the difference between Bernie Sanders and someone like an Elizabeth Warren is that we know that Elizabeth Warren can cross her T's and dot her I's with the best of them. She has her plans, they're detailed, they're technocratic. Like, that's her. She's a law professor. But she does not have the organic grassroots movement that Bernie Sanders has. So when Bernie Sanders says, I'm not only going to be the commander-in-chief, I'm going to be the organizer-in-chief, he means that, because that's who he is in his roots. He's an organizer. He's not a standard, Harvard-bred politician. He's somebody who started fighting on the ground. He started fighting with people. And now that he's in this position that he's in, he's taking it to the next level. And when you have somebody, and I don't think people appreciate the power of the presidency enough as far as domestic issues go, because it really is a bully pulpit. When Trump became the nominee, the Republican establishment was not all in for Donald Trump.
Not at all.
They were pretty much resistant to him. And what ended up happening? Oh, Trump ended up having, still was doing his rallies and stuff like that. And he'd go into states of senators who already were unpopular, and he'd hold these rallies, and he'd just go off the cuff and say what Trump says. And he started intimidating them because it was no longer, oh my God, like the drug companies or the military-industrial complex or these oil companies are running ads against me in my campaign. Now I have the president of the United States literally making global headlines, crushing me in my own state for not supporting his agenda. And so when Bernie Sanders says, like, yeah, I'm going to get people, the Democrats, to support my agenda, the Democrats in office, because you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to their cities, I'm going to go to their states, I'm going to go to their districts, and I'm going to hold rallies of thousands of people. That's different from having Senator Bernie Sanders do that versus President Bernie Sanders do that. And that's what we all thought that Barack Obama was going to do. Like you said, he built a powerful, powerful grassroots machine. Like, it was like his email list was like coveted by everybody. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure he could have made millions selling that email list. And what ended up happening, though, is once he got into office, he let those grassroots organizations wither and die. Like, he no longer had the pressure from the outside as well as the pressure he can bring himself from the inside. And he threw all that capital away. That's not going to happen with Bernie Sanders. He's not a bought-off politician. He doesn't want Goldman Sachs as a commerce advisor. He doesn't want, he doesn't want all these people coming in from Wall Street to now become education secretaries and secretaries of energy and this, that, and the other. He's resonating with real people because he's going to run a real campaign and he's going to have a real presidency.
Okay. Answer me this. Who would you say in history is the greatest president of anyone? Like, at all 40-something of them. Who was the best?
Probably FDR.
What did FDR run on?
Economic populism.
Barack came in as FDR. He gave you this hope and this appeal that you thought he was going to make a lot of change. Mm-hmm. Then when he became president, he became Bill Clinton.
Yep.
And it's not bad, but not what you said.
It's not the change that you were promising.
Right. And now Bernie's running as FDR, and Bernie's going to stay FDR.
Out of all the politicians that have ran for president in the last however many presidential cycles we've been alive for, there's been no one that's cut it close to Bernie Sanders. No. Who do you believe is going to get into the White House and not backtrack on what he said?
Right, and then he's going to push, and he's going to be more aggressive than Obama was against his own party and the Republicans. And if they don't toe the line enough, a lot of those Democrats are going to be replaced.
They're going to be replaced. You're going to have the president of the United States endorsing grassroots Senate runs, grassroots House of Representative runs. That is unheard. That's an unprecedented thing to occur in American politics.
It's toppling the political structure as we know it. And nobody wants that. All of these people that have 10, 12 terms as
It's
reps and
ridiculous.
senates and all this. Like they're career politicians,
Exactly,
and they've made millions off of it.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of it, you have people looking as in what have you done. You cannot point to anything that they've done. Nancy Pelosi has been rep countless times, and she's been Speaker of the House countless times. Every time it flips, she comes right back, and she does nothing. There's nothing you can point to.
She raises a lot of millions of dollars from our wealthy campaign contributors.
What the fuck does that have to do with
we want her as a House Speaker? Why wouldn't we, you stupid everyday Americans? And you're absolutely right, though. And I'm telling you now, that Iowa caucus, don't overlook the chances of Bernie Sanders winning that, and for another reason as well. If Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard supporters can't make up 15% each,
correct,
those supporters can then go and assign their support to any candidate that they want to. And there's no doubt in my mind that Tulsi Gabbard supporters and Andrew Yang, let's just go off the recent Iowa poll and say that they both make up 3% each, so 6% altogether. If you're telling me that Bernie Sanders, who's in a statistical tie for first place in Iowa, gets an extra 6% bump on caucus there, that's something that you cannot put into a poll.
No.
You
can. The poll that says that 50 to 55% of Democratic voters want to vote for another candidate, and they're not going to make up for it. So that swing is going to go to. It's not going to Joe. It's not going to Joe. It's going to go to Elizabeth, or it's going to go to Bernie. Mm-hmm. My money's on Bernie.
My money's on Bernie too, and he's probably going to win New Hampshire. And if Bernie Sanders wins Iowa and New Hampshire,
it's over.
Nevada's the third state to vote. That's another caucus state, and that's where Bernie gets his most Hispanic support from. Yeah. And that's a huge voting block in Nevada, is the Hispanic vote. I'm telling you now, if he wins those first three states, then he's definitely going to roll his way to the nomination, because right after that, and this is so key in this thing, is that California has now moved up to the first Super Tuesday. And if he gets that type of momentum going into Super Tuesday, and he gets California, and he gets a couple more of those states, this nomination might be wrapped up pretty quickly.
And California right now is the heartbeat for what the Democratic Party represents.
Absolutely.
I mean, you got the economy, and the strength of their economy is like top 5 versus
in
countries.
The world. Yeah,
like you can't.
That's why it's always so funny when conservatives are like, California doesn't like this country, they can secede from the country. Like, no, they can't, because we suffer from it. We need their economy.
It's not even close. And some of the other ones that are growing at that rate, they all got one thing in common: they all legalize marijuana.
They all legalize marijuana, and that, actually, that's another thing that I wanted to add too. For another reason why I think there's a spike coming in his polling is because the marijuana plan that he released recently, where our communities stand to gain the most from it economically, as far as the investment, as far as the tax revenue, and as far as keeping, and this is a huge important part of his legislation and why it's so groundbreaking, is that it keeps big tobacco and cigarette companies out of the marijuana industry. And if you're a company that has been accused or convicted of false advertisement or knowingly selling your product and making people sick, like the tobacco industry, you cannot partake in this. And every marijuana company is going to have 51% of normal everyday people as a part of their governing board. So I think that it's just a combination of his authenticity, his proposals that he's coming out with, and the fact that he got these endorsements at such a key time. I think that we're going to continue to see his rise. I think that we're going to continue to see Joe Biden's fall.
Couldn't agree more.